Character is probably the most fundamental pillar of story. It doesn't matter how good the plot or setting are. If your characters are boring or flat, it will be very hard to engage your audience. So here are 7 tips to help you create characters that are more complex and memorable. 1. Be specific. Specificity is a very popular word among authors, and there's a reason for that. It's one of the main factors in determining if something will feel generic or unique. But what does that mean? The dumbest and quickest example I can think of is don't make your character just like apples. Make them like dipping apple slices in their chocolate milk before eating it. Basically, extrapolate. And don't think only about their likes and dislikes. Do this for basically everything you can. Maybe they have blonde hair, but it's very frizzy and frail from all the bleaching they've done. Maybe they're very funny, but how are they funny? Maybe they're not usually the type to make jokes, but when everyone's tense, they make funny remarks to lighten up the mood. Or maybe they're not even trying to be funny, they're just so out of touch with reality that everything they say ends up being hilarious to the people around them. Or even then, they are making jokes, but they are so niche that no one understands them. My point is, don't let a trait just be a trait. Extrapolate on it. Think how you can make it unique for your character. What brings me to number 2. Don't make your character a list of traits. One feeling I have when seeing a poorly developed character is that they are a checklist of what a character should be. As if the author thought, they have to have a name? Tiffany. A strength? Smart. A flaw? Too emotional. This will generally result in the character feeling really flat. This example was exaggerated, but it normally looks like this. A character profile filled with what seems to be random information, because nothing ties in together. Nothing has a reason to be there. So, don't make your character a list of traits, make them a net of traits. The traits the character has should make sense with their upbringing, their life experiences, their relationships, everything. You create part of your character, but the other one you deduce from the things that you already have about them. If your character was bullied throughout their whole childhood, this will probably inform the way they interact with people as an adult. So maybe they're very insecure and make a lot of self-deprecating jokes. Or maybe they're just done with people and choose to be alone the most that they can. You should try to tie in the most aspects of your character that you can. Make sense of them. Or at the very least, don't let them conflict with each other, unless this is exactly what you want. Which brings me to number 3. Use contradictions. As a rule of thumb, most things should make sense, but sometimes they just don't. The human mind is very complex and is bound to have some contradictions. But the thing is, it should be deliberate. Contradictions can be used in so many ways and bring so much interest to your story and characters. They are an easy way to defy expectations, making your characters feel more intriguing and three-dimensional. According to David Kobe, there are 6 types of contradiction. Number 1, yes, I'm making a numbered list inside numbered list. Contradiction based on physical, ironic, or comic juxtaposition. These are the most obvious and easiest to understand. Maybe a sweet little girl who swears a lot, or a big strong man whose nickname is Tiny Pete. 2. Contradictions based on our need to serve multiple social roles. A way I like to think about this is that they are the masks we have to wear to go through life, that many times contradict with each other. For example, a construction worker, who's also a single dad. While he's at work, he's more serious and hardened, but as soon as he gets home to his daughter, he's all soft and playful. Neither of these aspects of him are made up. They are both him. 3. Contradictions based on competing morals or goals. This is when 2 or more things a character really values cannot coexist in a situation. So maybe a character dreams of traveling the world, being a nomad, but also needs a sense of stability in their life. They'll have to compromise on something. 4. Contradiction that results from a secret or deceit. If your character is hiding something, they'll probably act in unexpected ways in certain situations. If you know your friend's dad is having an affair, you might start acting really weird and distant when you're around him, making your oblivious friend confused about why you're acting like that. Number 5. Contradiction based on conscious versus unconscious traits. A way this is generally portrayed is when a character is repressing a feeling and it starts leaking through in different ways. So, for example, you start being mean with someone because deep down, you're feeling attracted to them and you're scared of that feeling. Number 6. Dispositional contradiction. This is when two or more conflicting traits coexist within a character. Maybe a great artist who has shaky hands, or an extremely shy woman who's a great public speaker, or a cowardly guy who's afraid of everything but loves extreme sports. All of this could be used on their own or in conjunction with each other, and if done deliberately and tastefully, it will make our characters so much more interesting. Number 4. Give them a want and a need. When people talk about this, they generally mean like the big picture, the whole story. But there's also another angle to it, the micro scale. Starting with the bigger picture. A want is what your character wants the most in life, what they think they need. A need is what they actually need. So let's say your character is a writer who really wants to write about all the suffering they've been through. They want that because they think it will give all their trauma meaning. They think it will make them feel better about it. But as they struggle reliving everything for the sake of this book, they realize that what they actually need is to let go. Their trauma doesn't have to mean anything. They can just leave it behind and move on. It's important that your character doesn't know what their need is. And if they do, they deny it. Because usually it conflicts with what they want. So this will dictate the arc and the direction the character will take within the story. But the micro, smaller scale is about individual scenes. In each scene, what does your character want? What do they need? And what do they fear? Have you ever played The Sims 2? One thing I really like about that game is that there is an interface that shows what your character wants and what they fear. Whenever you send them to a new location, new ones would appear, relating to the place they're on. So if you send them to a club, for example, a want they might get is to kiss someone or hit on someone, and a fear to be rejected. Some of them would be stronger and would last for a longer time, for example, getting a promotion or marrying your partner. But my absolute favorite part about that feature is that your sim could both want and fear the same thing. So maybe they really want to get married, but at the same time they are scared of it. I think this is a good visualization of what I'm trying to say. If your character were a sim, what would appear in their interface in that particular scene? Thinking about this will not only help you develop your character, but will also help you create more conflict, which is always a good thing. 5. Give them a fatal flaw. I think we're done with the whole marry Sue discourse after the term was misused so many times, but there's one thing you can take away from it. A character who's perfect is also very boring. So give your character some flaws. And I don't mean clumsy or too sensible, I mean things that are going to affect the plot. So if you want your flaw to be clumsy, don't make them just stumble over things, tripping you over and being cute. Make them so inattentive and negligent that they end up hurting people and are not able to keep a job. Flaws are meant to be significant. But the tip was not give your character flaws. It was give them a fatal flaw. But what is a fatal flaw? It's the flaw that's fundamental for the arc that your character has to go through. It's one of the aspects that determine the theme of the story. What's the flaw that will lead your character to their downfall if they don't change it? It generally ties to their need. The need is to combat this flaw. So let's say a character's flaw is their need for approval. Maybe they start doing theater and fall in love with it. But when they invite their family to watch them perform, they laugh at them, saying it's a stupid low-budget play and they should just quit and find a real job. Because this character needs people's acceptance so much, that's exactly what they do. They leave their dreams behind. What this character wants is for people to approve of them, no matter the cost. What they need is to understand that it doesn't really matter, that they should just pursue what makes them happy. Number 6. Use distinct speech patterns and mannerisms. This, in my opinion, is one of the best ways to bring your character to life. If every character of yours speak in the same way, talk about the same things, and have the same habits, it will be very difficult for any of them to stand out. I'm planning on making a whole video about this where I'll go in depth about character voice, but here are some thoughts. Your character's voice is not only how they talk, but also what they choose to talk about. One of the most common ways people give their character voices is by giving them a word or phrase that they repeat a lot. And yes, this is a good thing, but it shouldn't stop there. Their voice should be based on their worldview. A pessimistic character will probably talk in more of a negative light, maybe jumping to talking about damage control before something bad even happened. A curious character will probably make more questions than statements, and the painter could constantly point out the appearance of things around them, like how good the lighting looks through the curtains and how interesting that tree's branches are. It's also a good thing to think about what kinds of metaphors or analogies your character use. This could be influenced by their upbringing, their life experience, or their profession. Mannerisms are about your character's body language, habits, and quirks. The amount of detail you will give to this will depend on the medium you're writing. If you're writing a book, you probably will not describe your character's stance or facial expression every other sentence. They'll probably just appear when it's relevant to the story. But if you're writing a visual medium, like a screenplay or a comic like me, you'll have to portray their body language every single time the audience sees them. But in any medium, this is something to keep in mind. What's your character's posture? How well do they keep eye contact? Do they have any nervous tics? How do they keep their resting hands? Do they have any weird habits? There are a lot of different possibilities. Even if it sounds silly, it will give your character so much personality. And advice is to start paying attention to the people around you. How do they move? How do they speak? What are the unique little things about them? This will probably spark some ideas. And finally, number 7, give them something. What do I mean by this? A character should have something that piques interest about them. Of course, your main characters will probably have to be well-rounded and have many interesting things about them. But if you have a big cast or you have a lot of side characters, not all of them will have the luxury or the screen time to be three-dimensional. I see a lot of people say your characters should feel like real people. Your main characters probably should, but honestly, that's about it. Most of my favorite characters absolutely don't feel like real people, but they are so likable that I cannot help myself but to love them. So choose something. They could be very likable or relatable, they could have a unique personality or an unexpected backstory. Put a lot of effort into that one thing and make it really memorable. For example, the school's janitor could just be a generic janitor character, but he could also be a very grumpy guy that every time the protagonist goes through the floor that he's sweeping, he curses them and their entire family. Your character's mother could be a very sweet and nice lady who's just recently gotten out of prison for embezzlement. So, to reiterate, if your character has enough screen time, they probably should have multiple things that are interesting about them. But if they don't, at least give them something. That's how you make your side characters be memorable, even if they appear just twice in your whole book. My examples were pretty simple, but remember tip number 1 when writing. Specificity is always a good thing. So, these were my 7 tips. I definitely plan on making more videos like this one, so if you're interested in that, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. If there's something you want me to talk about, feel free to leave it in the comments. And that's it. Thank you for watching.